Of all a man's own belongings, the most divine is his soul, for it is most his own. A man's own belongings are invariably twofold. The stronger and better are the ruling elements, the weaker and worse those that serve. Wherefore, of one's own belongings, one must honour those that rule above those that serve. Thus it is that in charging men to honour their own souls, next after the gods who rule and the secondary divinities, I am giving a right injunction. But there is hardly a man of us all who pays honour rightly, although he fancies he does so, for honour paid to a thing divine is beneficent, whereas nothing that is maleficent confers honour. And he who thinks to magnify his soul by words or gifts or obeisances, while he is increasing it no whit in goodness, fancies indeed that he is paying it honour, but in fact he does not do so. Every boy, for example, as soon as he has grown to manhood, deems himself capable of learning all things, and supposes that by lauding his soul he honours it, and by eagerly permitting it to do whatsoever it pleases. But by acting thus, as we now declare, he is not honouring his soul, but injuring it, whereas we affirm he ought to pay honour to it, next after the gods. Again, when a man counts not himself, but others responsible always for his own sins, and for the most and greatest evils, and exempts himself always from blame, thereby honouring, as he fancies, his own soul, he is far indeed from honouring it, since he is doing it injury. Again, when a man gives way to pleasures contrary to the counsel and commendation of the lawgiver, he is by no means conferring honour on his soul, but rather dishonour, by loading his soul with woes and remorse. Again, in the opposite case, when toils, fears, hardships, and pains are commended, and a man flinches from them, instead of stoutly enduring them, then by his flinching he confers no honour on his soul, for by all such actions he renders it dishonoured. Again, when a man deems life at any price to be a good thing, then also he does not honour, but dishonour to his soul, for he yields to the imagination of his soul that the conditions and aids are altogether evil, instead of opposing it by teaching and convincing his soul that, for all it knows, we may find, on the contrary, our greatest blessings in the realm of the gods below. Again, when a man honours beauty above goodness, this is nothing else than a literal and total dishonouring of the soul, for such a statement asserts that the body is more honourable than the soul, but falsely, for nothing earth-born is more honourable than the things of heaven, and he that surmises otherwise concerning his soul knows not that in it he possesses and neglects a thing most admirable. Again, when a man craves to acquire wealth ignobly, or finds no qualm in so acquiring it, he does not then by his gifts pay honour to his soul. Far from it in sooth, for what is honourable therein and noble, he is bartering away for a handful of gold. Yet all the gold on earth, or under it, does not equal the price of goodness. To speak shortly, in regards to the things which a lawgiver enumerates and describes, as either on the one hand base and evil, or on the other hand noble and good, if any man refuses to avoid by every means the one kind, and with all his power to practice the other kind, such a man knows not that every one who acts thus is treating most dishonourably and most disgracefully that most divine of things, his soul. Hardly anyone takes account of the greatest judgment, as men call it, upon evil doing. That greatest judgment is this, to grow like unto men that are wicked, and in so growing to shun good men and good counsels, and to cut oneself off from them, but to cleave to the company of the wicked, and to follow after them. And he that is joined to such men inevitably acts, and is acted upon, in the way that such men bid one another to act. Now, such a resultant condition is not a judgment, for justice and judgment are things honourable, but a punishment, an infliction that follows upon injustice. Both he that undergoes this and he that undergoes it not are alike wretched, the one in that he remains uncured, the other in that he is destroyed, in order to secure the salvation of many others. Thus we declare that honour, speaking generally, consists in following the better, and in doing our utmost to effect the betterment of the worse, when it admits of being bettered. Man is no possession better fitted by nature than the soul for the avoidance of evil, and the tracking and taking of what is best of all, and living in fellowship therewith when he has taken it for all his life thereafter. Wherefore, the soul is put second in order of honour. As for the third, most every one conceives that this place naturally belongs to the honour due to the body, but here again one has to investigate the various forms of honour, which of them are genuine, which spurious, and this is the lawgiver's task. Now he, as I suppose, declares that the honours are these and of these kinds. The honourable body is not the fair body, nor the strong, nor the swift, nor the large, nor yet is it the body that is sound in health, although this is what many believe. Neither is it a body of the opposite kind to any of these. Rather, those bodies which hold the mean position between all these opposite extremes are by far the most temperate and stable. For while the one extreme makes the souls puffed up and proud, the other makes them low and spiritless. The same holds good for the possession of goods and chattels, and they are to be valued on a similar scale. In each case, when they are in excess, they produce enmities and feuds both in states and privately, while if they are deficient, they produce, as a rule, serfdom. And let no man love riches for the sake of his children, that he may leave them as wealthy as possible, for that is good neither for them nor for the state. For the young, the means that attracts no flatterers, yet is not lacking in things necessary, is the most harmonious of all and the best. For it is in tune with us and in accord, and thus it renders our life in all respects painless. To his children it behoves a man to bequeath modesty, not money, in abundance. We imagine that chiding the young for their irreverence is the way to bequeath this, but no such result follows from the admonition commonly given nowadays to the young, when people tell them that youth must reverence everyone. Rather is a prudent lawgiver to admonish the older folk to reverence the young, and above all to beware lest any of them be ever seen or heard by any of the young, either saying or doing anything shameful. For where the old are shameless, there inevitably also are the young to be very impudent. The most effective way of training the young, as well as the older people themselves, is not by admonition, but by plainly practicing throughout one's own life the admonitions which one gives to others. Thus, by paying honour and reverence to his kinsfolk and all who share in the worship of the tribal gods, and are sprung from the same blood, a man, in proportion to his piety, is to secure the favour of the gods of birth for his own begetting of children. Moreover, a man is to find his friends and companions kindly disposed in regards to life's intercourse, if he sets higher than they do the value and importance of the services he receives from them, while counting the favours he confers on them as of less value than they are deemed by his friends and companions themselves. In relation to his state and fellow citizens, that man is by far the best who, in preference to a victory at Olympia, or in any other contest of war or peace, chooses to have a victorious reputation for service to his native laws, as being the one man above all others who has served them with distinction throughout his life. Further, a man ought to regard contracts made with strangers as specially sacred, for practically all the sins against strangers are, as compared with those against citizens, connected more closely with an avenging deity. For the stranger, insomuch as he is without companions or kinsfolk, is the more to be pitied by men and gods. Wherefore he that is the most able to avenge secures them most readily, and the most able in every case is the stranger's daemon and god, and these follow in the train of Zeus, Xenius. Whoso then is possessed of but a particle of forethought is to take the utmost care to go through life to its very end without committing any offence in respect of strangers. Of offences against either strangers or natives, that which touches suppliants is in every case the most grave. For when a suppliant, after invoking a god as witness, is cheated of his compact, that god becomes a special guardian of him who is wronged, so that he is never to be wronged, without vengeance being taken for his wrongs. As concerns a man's social relations, in regards to his parents, himself and his own belongings, towards the state also, and his friends and kindred, whether foreign relations or domestic, our exposition is now fairly complete. It remains to expound next the characteristics which are most conducive to nobility of life, and after that we have to state all the matters which are subject, not to law, but rather to praise or blame, as the instruments whereby the citizens are educated individually, and rendered more tractable and well inclined towards the laws which are to be imposed upon them. Of all the goods, for gods and men alike, truth stands first. Therefore let every man partake from his earliest days, if he proposes to become blessed and happy, so that he may live his life as a true man, so long as possible. He is a trusty man, but untrustworthy is the man who loves the voluntary lie, and senseless is the man who loves the involuntary lie, and neither of these two are to be envied. For whoever is either faithless or foolish is friendless, and since, as time goes on, he is found out, he is making for himself, in his woeful old age, at life's close, a complete solitude, wherein his life becomes almost equally desolate, whether his companions and children are living or dead. He who does no wrong is indeed a man worthy of honour, but worthy of twice as much honour as he, and more, is the man who, in addition, consents not to wrongdoers when they do wrong. For where the former counts as one man, the latter counts as many, in that he informs the magistrates of the wrongdoing of the rest. And he that assists the magistrates in punishing, to the best of his power, let him be publicly proclaimed to be the great man of the state, and perfect, the winner of the prize for excellence. Upon temperance and upon wisdom will not bestow the same praise, and upon all the other gifts which, he who possesses them can not only keep himself, but can share also with others. He that thus shares these ought to be honoured as highest in merit, and he that fain shares them but cannot is second in merit. While if any man is jealous, and does not wish to share any good thing with anyone in a friendly spirit, then the man himself must be blamed, but his possession is not to be esteemed any the more because of its possessor. Rather one needs strive to gain it with all one's might. Let each of us be ambitious to gain excellence, but without jealousy. For a man of such character enlarges the state, since he strives hard himself and does not thwart others by calumny. But the jealous man, thinking that calumny of others is the best way to secure his own superiority, makes less effort himself to win true excellence, and disheartens his rivals by getting them unjustly blamed, whereby he causes the whole state to be ill-trained for competing in excellence, and renders it for his part less large and fair repute. Every man ought to be at once passionate and gentle in the highest degree, for, on the one hand, it is impossible to escape from other men's wrongdoings, when they are cruel and hard to remedy, or even wholly irredeemable, otherwise than by victorious fighting in self-defence, and by punishing most rigorously, and this no soul can achieve without noble passion. But, on the other hand, when men commit wrongs which are remediable, one ought to recognize in the first place that every wrongdoer is a wrongdoer involuntarily, for no one ever voluntarily seeks to acquire any of the greatest evils, least of all in his own most precious possessions, and most precious in very truth to every man is, as we have said, his soul. No one, therefore, ever voluntarily seeks to admit into this most precious thing the greatest evil, and live possessing it all his life long. Now, while in general the wrongdoer and he who has these evils are to be pitied, it is permissible to show pity to the man who has evils that are remediable, and to abate one's passion, and to treat him gently, and not to keep on raging like a scolding wife. But in dealing with the man that is totally and obstinately perverse and wicked, one must give free course to wrath, whereby we affirm that it behoves the good man to be always at once passionate and gentle. There is an evil, great above all others, which most men have implanted in their souls, and which each one of them excuses within himself, and makes no effort to avoid. It is the evil indicated in the saying that every man is by nature a lover of self, and that it is right for him to be so. But the truth is that the cause of all sins, in every case, lie in the person's excessive love of self. For the lover is blind in his view of the object loved, so that he is a bad judge of things just, and good, and noble, in that he deems himself bound always to value what is his own above what is true. For the man who is to attain the title of great must be devoted neither to himself nor to his own belongings, but to things just. And it is from this same sin that every man has derived the further notion that his own folly is wisdom, whence it comes about that, though we know practically nothing, we fancy that we know everything, and since we do not entrust to others the doing of things we do not understand, we necessarily go wrong in doing them ourselves. Wherefore, every man must shun excessive self-love, and ever follow after him that is better than himself, allowing no shame to prevent him from so doing. Precepts that are less important than these, and oftentimes repeated, but no less valuable, a man must repeat to himself by way of reminder. For, where there is a constant afflux, there must also be a corresponding influx, and when wisdom flows away, the corresponding influx consists in recollection. Wherefore, pleasures, pains, and desires are by nature especially human, and from these every mortal creature is, so to say, suspended and dependent by the strongest cords of influence. Thus, one must commend the noblest life not merely because it is of superior fashion in respect of fair repute, but also because if a man agrees to taste it and not to shun it in his youth, it is superior likewise in that which all men covet, an excess namely of joy, and a deficiency of sorrow throughout the whole of life. That this is clearly to be the result of a man tastes it rightly is at once to be fully evident. But wherein does this rightness consist? This is the question which we must now, under the instruction of our argument, consider. Comparing the more pleasant life with the more painful, we must in this wise consider whether that mode of life is natural to us, the other mode unnatural. We desire pleasure to be ours, but pain we neither choose nor desire, and the neutral state we do not desire in place of pleasure, but we do desire it in exchange for pain. And we desire less pain with more pleasure, but we do not desire less pleasure with more pain. And when the two are evenly balanced, we are unable to state any clear preference. Now, all these states in their number, quantity, intensity, equality, and in the opposites thereof, have, or have not, influence on desire, to govern its choice of each. And so these things being thus ordered of necessity, we desire the life in which the feelings are many, great, and intense, with those of pleasure predominating, but if the feelings of pain predominate, we do not desire it. And contrariwise, we do not desire the life in which the feelings are few, small, and gentle, if the painful predominate, but if the pleasurable predominate, we do desire it. Further, we must regard the life in which there is an equal balance of pleasure and pain, as we previously regarded the neutral state. We desire the balanced life insofar as it exceeds the painful life in point of what we like, but we do not desire it insofar as it exceeds the pleasant life in point of the things we dislike. The lives of us men must all be regarded as naturally bound up in these feelings, and what kinds of lives we naturally desire is what we must distinguish. But if we assert that we desire anything else, we say so only through ignorance and inexperience of the lives as they really are. What then and how many are the lives in which a man, when he has chosen the desirable and voluntary, in preference to the undesirable and involuntary, and has made it into a private law unto himself, by choosing what is at once both congenial and pleasant, and most good and noble, may live as happily as man can? Let us pronounce that one of these is the temperate life, one the wise, one the brave, and let us also class the healthy life as one. And to these let us oppose 4 others, the foolish, the licentious, the cowardly, and the diseased. He who knows the temperate life sets it down as gentle in all respects, affording mild pleasures and mild pains, moderate appetites and desires void of frenzy. But the licentious life he sets down as violent in all directions, affording both pleasures and pains that are extreme, appetites that are intense and maddening, and desires the most frenzied possible. And whereas in the temperate life the pleasures outweigh the pains, in the licentious life the pains outweigh the pleasures, in extent, number, and frequency, whence it necessarily results that the one life be naturally more pleasant, the other more painful to us. And it is no longer possible for the man who desires a pleasant life voluntarily to live a licentious life. But it is clear by now, if our argument is correct, that no man can possibly be licentious voluntarily. But it is owing to ignorance or incontinence, or both, that the great bulk of mankind live lives lacking in temperance. Similarly, with regard to the diseased life and the healthy life, one must observe that while both have pleasures and pains, the pleasures outweigh the pains in health, but the pains the pleasures in disease. The life that we have judged the more pleasant is not that in which pleasure is exceeded by pain, but in which pain is exceeded by pleasure. We assert then that since the temperate life has its feelings fewer, smaller, and lighter than the licentious life, and the wise life than the foolish, and the brave life than the cowardly, and since the one life is superior to the other in pleasure, but inferior in pain, the brave life is victorious over the cowardly, and the wise over the foolish. Consequently, the one set of lives ranks as more pleasant than the other. The temperate, brave, wise, and healthy lives are more pleasant than the foolish, licentious, cowardly, and the diseased. To sum up, the life of bodily and spiritual virtue as compared with that of vice, is not only more pleasant, but also exceeds greatly in nobility, rectitude, virtue, and good fame, so that it causes the man who lives it to live ever so much more happily than him who lives the opposite life. Thus far we have stated the prelude to our laws.